Okay, this video is to show you how to make a really good sized chinchilla exercise wheel. We found the wheels available in the shops are too small. They don't offer enough freedom for the chinchilla to run, and in some cases I've been told they can hurt their backs on the small wheels. So nothing in the UK we could find for sale, so we decided to make our own, and we hope this inspires you. Here is the finished product in motion with the chinchilla running happily. It's great fun to watch and they seem to really enjoy it. Ever since we built it, they've been running on it every night and it doesn't keep us awake. It's nice and smooth. Okay, you need a simple selection of tools to do the project. You can see here we have spanners, a screwdriver, tape measure, some flat washers and split washers, a good drill with some drill bits for drilling through metal, and I'll make a list of other parts as we go along. Okay, the critical parts you need for this project is a roller bearing, such as from a skateboard, or a roller blade wheel, which has an inbuilt bearing. At least 6mm hole through the bearing is what you need. If you can get a larger bearing, all the better. And you need a stainless steel bowl, at least 36cm or 14-inch diameter. We found Ikea's kitchen section to have just the job. Then you'll see these parts, the bearing shaft parts. There's just some one M6 bolt, some large washers, some M6 flat washers, M6 split washer and M6 nuts. There's the parts there. So here is the roller blade wheel, which we've taken off the roller blade, and you can see it has a bearing in the center. That's a 6mm hole through. That's the first critical item you need. If you have a skateboard wheel or a proper roller bearing bought from a bearing shop, even better. Here's the second critical item. It's a stainless steel all one piece bowl, quite light and thin but strong, that we bought from Ikea's kitchen section. It is 36cm diameter across the top of the bowl. That's about 14 inches, and that is the largest bowl that they sell. You need something at least that size and diameter for the chinchilla to run freely. I'd recommend this product. It's excellent for this job. Okay, so here we have the bearing from the skates, and you can see there's a 6mm hole through the one we found. If you can get a larger bearing or with a larger hole, then all the better, because we can only fit this 6mm diameter bolt through, and the thickness of that bolt adds to the strength of the whole design. The thicker the bolt, the better. So if you can find a skateboard or even a proper bearing from a bearing outlet that has a larger hole, all the better. The bolt you see in my hand is going to be taking all the weight of the structure, including the running chinchilla weight, so we would recommend no less than 6mm. We put it through the bearing, and there's sufficient length to fit these large washers and some smaller washers as the parts list. In fact, our bolt is 40mm long. There is a split washer, a hexagon nut, all at M6, 4 flat washers and 2 large washers. So there we are, about 40cm long. In fact, you could take a larger bolt and just hacksaw it down to the required length once you've done a trial assembly. So what we do is we take the bowl, we have to drill a hole exactly central in that bowl. Ignore the 2 outer holes, they were drillings for an experiment that failed. So we only need 1 central hole, and the hole only needs to be big enough for that bolt. In fact, my hole is a little too large. So drill it as small as possible just to get your bolt through. Your bolt is going to be captured by that bowl and they're going to spin together, so it needs to be as small as possible. Take some time measuring out the bowl to ensure you get exactly the center of that bowl, otherwise you're going to be driving your wheel not entirely symmetrically aligned. So place the bearing on top, on the outside, and this is the order in which you add the parts to the main bolt. First of all, put on the M6 flat washer, then a larger 9mm by 38 flat washer. This is to give the whole thing some strength, thickens up the bowl if you like, and we put that through the inside of the bowl. There we are, so the large washer is offering some strength to the bowl. Hold it underneath while on the outside you put the other flat large washer, again for strength, and then place the 3 M6 flat washers on top so that it builds a little height. 3 of those. Then we put the bearing on. Then we'll have the split washer on top, and then the nut. And that is the assembly order. And you can see that there is a gap underneath the bearing. The bearing can spin freely, but there is the gap created by the 3 flat washers and the large washer. Okay, so before we can tighten up the bearing shaft parts that you've seen, we do have to take the bearing away a moment and do some work on it. So I'll just leave the bowl to one side. Now we have to drill some M6 or 6mm holes through the bearing in the plastic parts on the outside, avoiding the bearing in the middle. Make them equally spaced and into a square pattern so that they are symmetrical as best as you can, as best as possible. It's only plastic, so it was easy to drill through with a good metal bit. And then we've got some further roofing bolts with a flat head. It's very important to have that flat head. Here are the parts: M6 roofing bolts, M6 flat washers, split washers and nuts. So you put your 4 roofing bolts, these are 55mm long, through those 4 holes you've drilled in the outer part of the bearing. Now go back to your bowl, remove the split washer and the nut off the top, retaining the flat washers, and then pop the bearing on top. And then return the spring washer to the centre and the nut. Then we tighten up the nuts on the centre by holding the spanner on the inside of the bowl and the outside of the bowl, as you can see. Tighten that up really tight. Okay, so we've got the centre really tight. Now we put some M6 flat washers on each of these support rods, as you can see, and a spring washer as well, one on each, and then tighten the nut down on each so that the rods get pulled up tight into the bearing. And then you can tighten up the 4 nuts that you've added. Don't over tighten them, it'll crush the bearing or squash the plastic of the bearing, which can interfere with its freedom to rotate. Just tighten them up equally, nipping them up so that the 4 support rods have come through, and the head underneath is missing the bowl. And then by holding the entire bearing in my hand, you see that we have a free turning. Right, these following parts are added to the 4 bearing support rods to create an angle at which the mounting plate can be added. Bear with me and you'll see how this works, but essentially it's just 3 hexagon nuts and 4 flat washers. And then you need a mounting plate, some steel, at least 2 to 3mm thick, perhaps 100mm square, as you'll see what I've used in a moment. Something that offers support and takes the strain of the run. So with the parts I've just displayed, add 1 extra nut to the left hand rod, 1 extra nut to the right hand rod, and to the furthest back rod add 4 washers and an extra nut. To the foreground rod do nothing. So this will create now a slope on which we can mount our plate, as you will see. So here is the mounting plate bought from a local hardware store. It's thick enough, but for me it didn't have big enough dimensions. It needs to spread the load across your cage. So for that I have sandwiched it between some larger plates that I found lying in the garage. In fact, they are old shelf dividers or shelf brackets, and the three together make a nice thick plate area of about 100 mm square. So take your plate and drill the 4 holes in it to align with the support rods, and then slide the plate onto those 4 rods, and because of the nuts you've added underneath, they will end up at an angle when pressed down, as you can see in this photograph. And to secure the plate in place at this angle, you need these parts. It's again just some M6 flat washers, 4 of those, some M6 nuts, or you could use wing nuts, again 4 of those. So place the M6 flat washers over each of the support rods that are sticking through the plate. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can add some extra washers if you want, as I am, just to take the load. Add a nut to each of the support rods to fix it in place. I've added some wing nuts just to make life easier for me to the top and the bottom rod, and then progressively tighten up those wing nuts so that the angle is confirmed at a slope. Tighten the top one up, then the bottom one, and then go back to the top one again, and then finally tighten up the 2 side nuts with a spanner, pinch them up so that we have a nice angle, and then by holding up the whole bracket we have a free turning bowl which is in an upright angle so that the inner surface is slightly sloping backwards, so that the chinchilla can run with some confidence, not fall out. And you can see the angle there. And we're going to now mount that plate. And to mount the plate, we just need again some roofing bolts. I've just used M6. You can use any size you wish, really. Some large flat washers which will clamp the cage, and some M6 wing nuts to fix those washers in place. And so here's a photograph of the M6 bolts coming through the holes that I've drilled in the outer part of the plate, 4 corners effectively, with the washers and the wing nuts. And there are the wing nuts holding the washers on the outside of the cage, with the entire assembly on the inside. And there we have the finished product in place, slightly angled upwards, as previously described. It should spin freely and make no noise. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and there is one chinchilla running happily. Hope this inspires you. Thank you.